Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
2 days ago, I believe it was, I saw in the newspaper, which is no longer a newspaper, it's a news screen. Nowadays, read this on the computer, the newspaper. A short article saying that the Pope, who's the head of the Roman Catholic Church, you probably all know, you've all heard of the Pope, right? He's a big figure, even among all of you who have really nothing to do with Christianity, but you've heard of the Pope. He's a big man in the world. He's probably the world's biggest religious leader in terms of numbers of people, because the Roman Catholic Church is the world's biggest religious institution in terms of numbers and probably in terms of wealth, influence and everything else. So, for the first time ever, a Pope had a TV interview in which they gave him 7 questions out of several thousand that were sent from all over the world. And the report said that the questions mostly focused on suffering. So one of the questions was about suffering. Why is there suffering? And the Pope's answer was that we cannot know, but we can take example from Christ how he was suffering, because this is the Easter season. They say that it's around this time of year that Jesus was crucified. Today is Easter Monday, which has some significance. I can't remember what, but the main thing is Good Friday, the day that Jesus was crucified. So they say. So as I was growing up as a Catholic, we weren't allowed to eat meat on Friday because Jesus was killed on that day. But by that time they'd already made the allowance that you could eat fish. So Friday is fish day. So his reply was that we cannot, why is there suffering? We cannot know. By we, he's speaking, I presume, as the whole human race. But actually it's very clear from Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, what does Krishna say about this? Anyone? Purusha sukha dukhanam bhuktritve heturuchyate. The person who enjoys or suffers in this world, he is himself the cause of his own enjoyment and suffering. Or as it is said in English, man is the architect of his own destiny. Where does that saying come from? You could find it out. It's probably, sounds like a Shakespeare one. It's interesting to find these things out. Not for you, but for me. I find it interesting. Man is the architect of his own destiny. Or as is said in the Bible, as you sow, so you shall reap. Is that not an indication of karmic reaction? So we can say, he can't say. It would have been more honest to say, I don't know, instead of saying, we don't know, no one can know. But I suppose he takes the official version of the Bible, or the official interpretation of the Bible, of their Bible. Of course, there are different Bibles. Each church has their own Bible, all a little bit different. So he takes their or what you could call Catholic theology as being the standard of knowledge, which goes back to the medieval times when knowledge meant what the church teaches you. And then after some time, someone looked through a telescope and said, hey, the church got it wrong. And then this Galileo narrowly missed an appointment with the Inquisition for saying so. But in course of time, the Catholic Church, they changed their stance. And according to the Catholic Church, evolution, the biological evolution of the species is a fact. Although evangelical Christians, they don't believe in that. They believe that there may be different groups, but they believe more or less that the Noah's Ark was like 5,000 years ago and all this kind of thing. So, to say, if he had said, I don't know, that would have been more honest. But he goes by the standard. Actually, according to the traditional Christian teaching, the reason is because Adam and Eve ate an apple. That's why we're suffering in this world. But I guess even they themselves understood that's so stupid that they preferred to say, we don't know. But why does he say, we don't know? Like no one can know. Because you don't know doesn't mean that no one knows. And if you don't know, so many people are asking you questions about suffering. Why do they ask him questions about suffering? If the President of the United States has a TV interview, they don't ask him that question. They'll ask him about the economy, about the Iraq and this and that, but they won't ask any philosophical question. If they bring on some baseball star for an interview, they'll ask him about baseball. And the president, because he's the president, he's supposed to be able to give answers about the economy and foreign policy and all the, whatever. He's supposed to know which lies to say for each individual subject. And a doctor, they ask some questions, a specialist in rheumatoid arthritis, and they'll ask, he's supposed to answer. He's supposed to be a specialist. And so this Pope is supposed to be a spiritual leader, and people ask him about suffering. And he says, we don't know. Then what the hell are you doing being a spiritual leader? If you don't know, you can't tell people the most basic question. You can't answer it. And then you say, well, we should just believe in Jesus. Oh, why? That was my question at about the age of 12. Why should I believe this? Just because you say. And on the threat that if you don't believe it, you burn in hell forever. Well, all right, I'll go, better go to hell and live with that guy who burns everyone down there. It's better to burn than live with such a nasty person. They couldn't. If you tried to imagine what's the most nasty person that could possibly exist, that's the Christian definition of God, and also the Islamic definition. That he just a few people who lick his posterior, they get saved, whatever that means. And then the rest of them, they just burn in hell forever. So it's a horrible idea. And why is there suffering? We don't know. Well, if you don't know, then don't take the position of a spiritual leader. This blind faith, you just expect people to have blind faith. Some from a Muslim country asked, why is there so much suffering? And he said, well, you should become he said you should take shelter of Christ. Become a Christian. Well, what's the benefit? Going from one blind faith system to another blind faith system. And why is it any better being a Christian than being a Muslim? What's the answer? They can't say. That was again my question. That the Christians will tell me you believe in this and you go to hell. The Muslims also say you believe in it or you go to hell. The Catholics say believe us or you go to hell, and the Protestants say believe us or you go to hell. So I don't know. It's like, what do I do? How am I to know what's what? It's just like a gamble. Okay, I'll be a Catholic and hope for the best. And but if I'm wrong, then you go to hell forever. You burn in hell forever. So Prabhupada, he often said that just like people, they go to an institution for higher knowledge. If everyone studies at school, 2 + 2 = 4. But then if you want higher knowledge, if you want to go on and up in mathematics, you have to go to the proper place where they can teach you. So if you're actually interested in God, and you don't know, then why not come? to those who can teach. There is knowledge. Just like here we have Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto. The very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam gives more factual knowledge about the Supreme Personality of Godhead than all of what's ever been said in all the Abrahamic traditions put together. Abrahamic means Judaism, Christianity, Islam. So in all of them together, they either say, well, we don't know God, or we can't know God, or in the case of Islam, they say you shouldn't even, practically they say you shouldn't even try to know anything about it. It's too far beyond you. Don't think. But here we have in Bhagavatam actual knowledge. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadyasya Yatonvyad Itaratas Charteshvabhnya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye Muhyanti Yat Suryaha Tejo Vari Mridang Yatha Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrsha Dhamna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakang Satyang Parang Dhimahi. How is that? I was reading is that a proper sh? It looks more like a p. Make a note and write. It's a p. It should be a Satyam Param. Trisago Mrisha. It should be sh. That little line is missing there. It's not clear. It looks like Mripa. So make a note. They've wrongly typeset that and send to Jagadish in Bombay. Should be Mrisha, not Mripa. Amripa. I don't know what that means, but whatever. It should be Amrisha. Amrisha means without falsity. Means truth. What's the definition given here? Trisago. Amrisha. Almost factual. So anyway, the translation. O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes of the creation, sustenance and destruction of the manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion, as one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen in fire or land seen on water. Only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna, who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. So this is factual knowledge, and the whole Bhagavatam gives so much knowledge of the personality of Godhead and our relationship with him. So this knowledge should be propagated. These books should be distributed widely. And people who are sincere will accept that, whatever background they're from. Murari Prabhu, maybe you know, he came here I think once. Yeah. So he's in Africa now, preaching in Malawi. So one of the persons, when he first went there, one of the first persons he distributed Prabhupada's books to was a Baptist pastor, something like this. And when he started reading the books, and then he became a devotee. He says, because he just found the knowledge is so much more than whatever he had prior to that. So if people are sincere, then they will take to this. I heard that years ago our devotees, when they used to distribute books in Italy, still the country is so, they always used to do book distribution. In the Western countries, often our devotees go in kami clothes to distribute books, but in Italy they always went in devotee clothes because people are quite pious there. maybe due to the influence of the Catholic Church, incidentally. So whenever they went in any town or village, the first place they would go would be to the monastery, to the church, to the nunnery, the convent. That's what it's called, convent. And because they'd always take a full set of books. And devotees often had the experience that they would come again, and then the priest would call them in the church and have them lecture to the people and say, well, these people know much more about God than I do. I used to go to church so many years, and I used to sit through these lectures. To this day, I can't remember one single word about. And every morning in school we used to have a religious lecture. I can't remember anything because it was I just found it extremely uninteresting. Nothing of any interest, and just a bunch of gobbledygook. So that was going on, but apparently word came from on top. The order came down from the Vatican. Don't get too friendly with these Hare Krishnas. So, there's good scope here in India also. Right here in Secunderabad, Sahadev Prabhu told me that he had been invited to there was some big conference of Muslims, and he was invited to go there and speak. It was not only from India, from different parts, from Arabic countries also. And he spoke on Nam Tattva, something. And he spoke in Hindi, and then they translated it into Arabic and this and that. So he said the people were very impressed and open, and he was in the airport in Delhi, and a couple of Muslims came up to him and carried his bags, and they were very respectful to him. So people are more sincere, they will appreciate. And actually, we're not on a trip here banging and bashing Christians and Muslims. There are many I've seen, there are many people who they really are dedicated. They really are godly inclined. In Bangladesh, I saw in the villages, it's a very common thing. They'll have all-night katha, Islamic katha. And there's not much depth there. They're village people, so they're just saying, oh, Allah is so great, and you should all do namaz and all this. There's not much depth, but they're into it. People go, they organize it, and they go and they sit all night and listen to this. And so they told me also he was called to a Christian seminary, and he spoke to them also. And he spoke on Nam Tattva, and the people were astonished. They couldn't imagine there was so much depth. So, although we're saying these things here, it's probably not a good, among ourselves, it's not a good policy to go out and start attacking Christianities like that. But just if we present the positive side, that here is real knowledge of God, then those who are sincere, they will come and take it. People, they must be disappointed if they ask someone who's supposed to be the biggest leader of the Christians, and they ask him a question, he says, "I don't know." The most basic question, they don't know the answer. But we can give the answer. Bhakti Swami told me years ago, he was invited to a conference in Switzerland on reincarnation. They're all different people, Buddhists, and then these different psychoanalysts, and he said he was the only one who had anything substantial to say. Otherwise they just didn't know. They didn't know. So this knowledge that we have, it requires to be propagated. We shouldn't propagate Krishna consciousness just like some other religion. We're out to get converts and we're in competition. But we want to give knowledge is one thing, the factual knowledge, and we give people a way of life, a practical way of life by which they can live better. The Srila Prabhupada very much wanted these farms, in which we can show people how you can live happily and simply and healthily and morally. Srila Prabhupada wanted that. And in our farms, from what I understand, it wasn't Prabhupada's idea even that everyone has to be a devotee. But they may not even be, they may be devotees but at different levels. But everyone can come and do some work and do some service. Not be a devotee, they don't have to be a devotee, that doesn't mean they can go out and get drunk. I mean, they have to follow some things. But they let them come and do some work. And in this way, by associating with devotees, and they can also become purified. So these are practical programs. Show something better. We should criticize this demoniac society and these stupid ideas that people have in the name of religion. We should know that it's not all the same, like interfaith conference and yes, you're very nice, everyone says you're very nice to each other and that's it, finished. But we should know that this is superior. Everyone says they're superior, but we should understand why this is superior, not just because. If we ask these fanatical Christians that, well, why should we follow? So because it's in the Bible. And you say, why should we accept the Bible? Because it's the Word of God. Well, how do you know the Word of God? Because it says in the Bible. A circular argument. So it doesn't appeal to any intelligent person. So we should propagate this knowledge and at the same time show a better way of life, and in this way help people to come to the actual point. Otherwise people are being misled. They think that some meat-eating Mother Teresa is such a great saint, or some meat-eating Dalai Lama is such a great saint. And Prabhupada, practically in the world, people don't know him. He's not a well-known figure. Even in India among Hindus, he's not a well-known figure. Because they can't recognize. They think someone who talks big, smiles nicely and talks some big words, peace, compassion, love, wonderful. Peace, compassion, love, and make sure you have at least 2 kilos of meat for me to eat every day. So, they don't recognize Prabhupada. They don't recognize his contribution. So we have a lot of work to do. Who recognizes? Coming back to the beginning of this, what I was speaking about, the different Vaishnava Sampradayas. They recognize what Prabhupada has done. They have great appreciation for that. And despite all the failings of our own society, they're often very, very appreciative that we are trying to, and to some extent being very effective in spreading Vishnu Bhakti. That some years ago at a meeting in Bangalore, in which I happened to be present, the Pejava Swami, that Vishveshwar Tirtha Maharaj, who's the most, definitely now, he's the most senior of the Madhva sannyasis. He said openly there were several Madhva leaders and several Sri Vaishnava leaders, and he said that Iskan is the only institution that can spread Vishnu Bhakti around the world. So he recognized that. So Prabhupada would be very happy at that. Of course, it's a fact. So, Hare Krishna. Is there any question about this place? Yeah.
Starting in Ayodhya and Varanasi near, lot of Ramanandi people are there.
Yeah, in Ayodhya and Varanasi, a lot of Ramanandis. Yeah, of course, all over North India, but these are two of their main spots. Ramanandi is a sampradaya that is claimed to be an offshoot of the Ramanuja sampradaya. It was started by one sadhu called Ramananda, and they're very much followers of Ram according to the Tulsidas Ramcharitmanas, which I'm going through at the moment in an English translation, which there's a lot of bhakti there, but at the same time there's prakat mayavad also. I mean, all repeatedly saying that the nirgun, nirupa, anama has come as Rama, and so philosophically they're not clear. But there's some idea of bhakti there. The orthodox Ramanuja Sampradaya don't accept them as being actual. That's why I say that if we want to spread the definition wider, we could include the Ramanandis. Atma Tattva Prabhu told me, or others also, a story once that I believe it was a Kumbh Mela. One man brought his son, and he was a Ramanandi. I can't remember exactly the story, but Prabhupada blessed that son and said that he'll be a great Acharya in future, and he's become a big Ramanandi leader like this. So, from what I can see, Prabhupada, he wasn't like pushing that everyone has to join Iskan. I don't see it was like that. He didn't preach that should change the tilak on the deities in South India to Gauriya tilak. I don't see it like that. But he did want the people to follow properly their own proper traditions. But the proper traditions nowadays, people can't follow them anyway because they don't have time, is one thing, to do all. What pujas and study the average Brahmana used to do in the Madhva or Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. Nowadays people, they have neither the time nor the inclination nor the culture. There's no one to teach them all these things. So the Gauriya tradition of chanting the holy names it's not Gauriya, it's in all of them. Because they all know, because it's in all the Shastras, that in Kali Yuga, Nama Kirtan is the Yuga Dharma. They'll all agree. Sri Vaishnavas, Madhvas, they'll all agree. But practically, Iskan is doing that. So, it's very practical.
Another question.
Yeah, let Madhav Gopinath ask.
One place I read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took two things from each sampradaya.
Yeah, I don't know if it's from Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Mahaprabhu took two things, two principles, two main principles from each sampradaya.
Is it not inclusive?
Is that not inclusiveness? Yeah, well, we can say that. In that sense it is. But the question that was asked was a different kind of question, like all the sampradayas coming together and working together like this. Yeah.
Regarding Ramcharitmanas, Sri Prabhupada written on Prabhupada.
In Prabhupada is not a great fan of Ramcharitmanas, that's for sure.
So somebody putting that, somebody asking 71 or 72 Africa to Sri Prabhupada that whatever Tulsidas became, what position of the Tulsidas. So Prabhupada told that Tulsidas is a devotee of Lord Rama. So by quoting that, somebody was speaking Ramcharitmanas. So whether we should read Ramcharitmanas?
Well, you can't take Prabhupada's one quote on any subject, and you should see all of them. Prabhupada himself, he was asked to speak, and he quoted some Sanskrit verse in one meeting, and a very beautiful verse describing the beauty of Lord Rama. And Prabhupada said that Tulsidas here has explained Ram Leela according to his own understanding. So we can simply say that he was a devotee of Lord Rama, but all the Vaishnava Sampradayas, they all accept that the Valmiki Ramayana, that's the standard. That's all. Jayapataka Maharaj once asked Prabhupada about seeing the influence of the Ramcharitmanas. Of course, he was in Bengal, but then even there in Calcutta, there are so many Marwaris. who were much enamored of that. They're all followers of this. Well, they're all Ram Sukdas Ji Maharaj and this Gita Press. They're all very much into that. So Jagtar Maharaj asked about having a Gauriya commentary on Ramcharitmanas. Prabhupada said, why? We have so many of our own books, we can make comments. Why that? Anyway, people say so many things and do so many things, but we don't have to. In the name of Prabhupada, people say so many things, but what's the value of that?
Somebody asked one question.
Yeah.
We can repeat it. Why we should fast on Ekadasis and other Vaishnava appearance days?
Well, why should we fast on Ekadashis and other appearance days? Srila Prabhupada writes that the main reason is to save time so that we can concentrate on worshipping Govinda. That's the main reason that Prabhupada gives. Elsewhere he speaks of it as an austerity. In the first canto here in Bhagavatam he says that if everyone fasted twice a month, that would be very good for everyone's health. So there are various reasons. Main reason is to be more Krishna conscious. Yeah.
In the past you had mentioned that if somebody says, while preaching to or distributing books, if they say I am a Christian, it's better to walk away saying Hare Krishna and focus on...
If we meet someone who's a Christian when we're distributing books, generally we say Hare Krishna and leave them. Yeah, that's the general advice. Because usually they just waste your time.
They drain sometimes.
Yeah, they go on talking and talking and talking and they don't take a book. So what's the point of wasting time? There may be cases where you can sell books to them. In India, if they're not new converts, they can be quite good for selling books too. If they're not new converts. The new converts, they're all, completely antagonistic to anything else. But Guru Das Prabhu, who used to distribute books in Bangalore before it was decided that the worst thing they could possibly do is distribute books in Bangalore, they used to go on the trains, and the Kerala trains they found very good, and the Christians would take books. But they'd open the book, read a little of it, and then they'd buy it. They wouldn't just buy it, but they'd see there's something worthwhile, and then they'd buy it. And he told me, Guru Das Prabhu told me that he was sitting down with some family. They called him and he sat down. He spoke to them, a Christian family from Kerala. And he said that, we know there's nothing in Christianity. He said, we know, we've been brought up with it. And you can imagine, actually, if you're educated somewhat and you're raised in a Christian family in India, and there's all this culture here of the Upanishads and there's so much deep spiritual knowledge, even misrepresented by Mayavadis. It's still much more profound than simply believe in it or you go to hell. So, people who are somewhat educated and spiritually inclined, they cannot help but notice that.
And I also noticed one more thing in Kerala when I was recently there. They are adopting, the Christians are adopting all the puja, the Karpura, and then they have one.
The Christians, it's a policy in India to pretend that they're Hindus and convert people in that way. So they think they do all the rituals Hindu style, but they direct it all to Christ. In this way they convert people. They have so many tricky ideas. This book I have, Breaking India, you can see that. It gives a good insight into all the tricks and schemes and all kinds of things they're doing. And deliberately altering the history. And it's been going on since the Europeans first came here. And still going on. And still in the Western world, they always present India as being like a really backward, violent, savage, bad country. That's what they give in the school books and everything. They always present that image. I learned many things from that book, actually. One very good comment they made is that, like in India there are riots, in the West there are riots. In the West, if there are riots, or they present it as an aberration, which means it's a deviation from the norm. Actually, Western people are very civilized. So if there's a riot, it just means that something unusual. But if in India or Africa there are riots, they present, that's just the way the people are. They're so uncivilized. That's their culture. And even it was from Europe, all the First World War, the Second World War came, right? The Nazi atrocities and all that. But that's just considered something like, something went a little wrong there. But basically we're very civilized people. And no one discusses how the civilized Europeans came and just practically slaughtered the whole of the population of North America, which was already there. They say Columbus discovered America. There are already people there. But both mostly the English in North America and the Spanish and Portuguese in South America, they just butchered the local population. Just killed them. Complete genocide. We hear so much about the Nazis with the Jews, but we don't hear so much about the English with what they call the Red Indians. So it's very biased propaganda, and the Indian people believe it themselves. That actually the West, that is the real standard of civilization. So, and they made all this they invented this thing of the Aryans invaded, and then they pressed down the Dravidians into South India. And actually the Dravidian, the original culture is Dravidian, and Sanskrit came from Tamil. You heard that, right? And St. Thomas, the Christian, it was from him that Sanskrit came, and the whole Hindu culture is actually it's come out of Christianity, and so many just total lies. Complete lies. And then they turn the Tamils against others and make them think we're different and we've been oppressed by the people. And they turn against the Brahmins, and they're deliberately they turn people against each other so that they divide and rule. That's the idea. So it's an interesting book. They've documented all of this. So many things. Now, some Bharatanatyam Institute in Chennai, there was some Christian girl came in, and then eventually she came up in the ranks, and now she took it over. Now they took out all the Ganesh and Saraswati, and they say, no, it's just Indian. It's nothing to do with all of this, and the original culture of India is Christian, so they make it all into Christian. Just very, very strange. And the politicians go along with it. So many things. So many times they found stashes or they know that there are stashes of guns in different mosques, but they won't do anything because the police can't do anything. Because the politicians, they have their vote. They have their vote banks, vote bank politics. So in the West, people think that India is full of caste, and it's like caste oppression, and that's like the main thing of India. The actual fact is that by the laws, there is caste oppression. The Brahmanas are oppressed; they have less rights. Anyway, it's a mess. It's so complex. It's like such a complex situation, you can't disentangle it. You have to cut it. So we can cut it by Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, to try and sort it all out, it's impossible. But there are some things we should do. We should start our own schools and teach people what's actually going on. In the schools, what do you learn? It's all lies, just to make you a slave. But the funny thing is, our devotees, they don't even believe it themselves. They think, I have to send our children to school and get a good job. And They don't realize that they're just being brainwashed in the schools so you can become a materialist. So, if you're going to have children, you have to teach them what's in Prabhupada's books. Otherwise, you're just join the cheaters. The whole society is cheating. And if you give them a mundane education, then you're just cheating them, that's all.